Hello, Trombone Internet. This is Chris Van Hoff, assistant to the regional manager of the International Trombone Festival. We at the festival, of course, are huge fans of the pod, and we are really excited to invite you to attend this year's 2024 International Trombone Festival at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Dave Begnosh is our host. We have the world premiere of a brand new double concerto for trombone and piano with the Fort Worth Symphony. We have the American Brass Quintet. We have late night jazz featuring a Latin jam session. Like, everything is happening. All the cast will be there. It's the best hang in the world, and we hope to see you there. You can register for the festival still online at www.internationaltrombonefestival.com, and it's happening the last week of May. So go register. We'll see you in Texas.
Welcome to the Trombone Retreat, podcast of the Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Today on the podcast, we hang out with Mark Lawrence, former principal trombonist of the San Francisco Symphony. My name is Sebastian Vera, and I'm joined as always by a man who's 39 years young today, Nick Schwartz. Happy birthday, brother, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Yours is coming up soon, so we'll catch you on that one.
Okay, let's focus on you. We're not quite there yet, nor am I there mentally. How you feeling?
Still worn out from Nutcracker Run, to be honest.
It's over now. You can let it go.
It's over. I'm working on it. Still recovering, but feeling good.
You're on your Nutcracker vacation until November, so enjoy it.
That's true.
Got big plans today?
Nothing.
Really?
No plans.
Well, I'm honored that we get to spend a little time here together to document this birthday.
Yeah. This is a good way to spend it so far. Highlight.
Well, I will surely ruin it at some point. So we talked to Mark Lawrence. I grew up listening to his trombonology record, and you got to study with him for a brief time. But I mean, another huge name in our industry that, principal trombone of the San Francisco Symphony for 34 years. It was really cool talking to him. He's got this, he's still playing, but he's got this, chill Sonoma, California life now.
He had that before he retired, but now it's like amplified. It's like even more chill.
He's a pretty relaxed person. I'd never had much of a conversation with him before. And so he's very peaceful, soft-spoken, took a second to open up a little bit, but a ton of wisdom pedagogically he shared, and just really cool, interesting talking with him about like his career in the orchestra and different conductors and all the recordings they've made.
Yeah, he was definitely in the room where it happens. Hamilton reference. I'm with it.
Boom.
I'm with it, folks. No, he was definitely at the front end of a lot of things that are still going on, like the Bay Brass and Summit Brass and those legendary recordings we talked about. So, I mean, he had a lot of great stuff to talk about.
You have a nice little raspiness to your voice, a little birthday rasp.
You know what it is I haven't really spoken to anyone in like 3 days.
What have you been doing? Are you on some like birthday meditation retreat or something?
If you call watching reruns of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, whatever you just call it, then yes, that's what I've been doing.
Man, I wish I could come kidnap you for the day. Go on a Nick and Sebastian day of fun.
Kind of like Harold and Kumar go to White Castle?
Yeah, I would think so. It would probably involve some of those things. Thanks to our Patreon patrons. Did a live Meet Your Maker episode at Houghton Horns. I was at home in Texas over the break, and I visited Houghton Horns, and I needed my horn to have a cleaning, and they did a 2-hour intensive cleaning of my trombone, and it's incredible now. But I got to just pick Dennis Houghton's brain, who's this master craftsman, and just watch him and video him working on my horn. So it was really cool. So put up a little mini video up on the Patreon feed at patreon.com/trombone retreat. Thanks for everyone that's supporting us there. The Third Coast Trombone Retreat with Joe Alessi and Jeremy Buckler, guest artist, is June 19th through 25th. Final deadline is March 20th. Apply early by March 1st. It's for anyone over 18 pursuing a career in music for a discounted app fee. apply early, visit tromboneretreat.com. This will be our 10th annual. It's going to be sweet. Speaking of fountain horns, we got shipped something pretty cool. Did you get yours yet?
I did. I'm not wearing it at the moment.
I'm wearing it right now, so if you can imagine, they made a sports jersey. They've done this with Mahler 5 in the past, but you know trombones, we like Mahler 5, but there's another Mahler that's a little more special to trombonists. So they made a sports jersey, and it says Mahler 3 on the back with like a big number 3, like a athletic jersey. It's super cool, and thank you for sending these. They usually sell out fast, so go to houghtonhorns.com. First class brass to order yourself one.
Enjoy this episode with Mark Lawrence.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good to see you. Wow, who's the gentleman?
How are you guys doing with the weather back there?
We're doing okay. I think we're spread out. Nick's in New York. I'm in Texas right now visiting my family.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, New York,
Yeah.
This part of New York, I mean, New York City is not so bad. I mean, Western New York, they got pummeled, as you probably saw.
Oh, yeah. Looked awful. No, we're, it's paradise out here. We're doing fine.
How cold does it get?
Well, Nick, you remember. Maybe high 40s, low 50s, something like that.
Are you still up?
Yeah, I'm in Sonoma, so I'm a little north of the city.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were in Sonoma because last time I saw you, you were living in, I don't know, what would that be, Sebastopol or like
Sausalito.
Sausalito.
Maybe.
That's right.
Yeah,
So you're not in cities that begin with the letter S.
that's right.
Well, you were in
By the way,
San Rafael at one point.
Yes, I was.
That's true. All S's.
I'm surprised you even remember that.
I don't
What
know.
were you about to say? You were about to say, by the way, something?
No, I was just going to say, I was going to congratulate you both on all your accomplishments in your career. You've done great.
Thanks.
That's
trying
really
to-
nice. I mean, just trying to pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly.
Aren't we all? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And these podcasts, you just do a really nice job with them. You really do.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a great service to a young trombonist. I think it's fabulous. I wish I'd had something like this when I was growing up.
That's awesome to hear, and we're definitely going to extract as much knowledge from you today as possible. I still remember auditioning for you when I was 18, and I was like razor's edge close coming to study with you at San Francisco. And I think little Sebastian, growing up in a little town in Texas, was like really intimidated by going to this conservatory in a state I'd never been to. And as much as I listened, I'm not exaggerating, I listened to trombonology incessantly all the time. It was one of my favorite recordings growing up.
That's really nice of you to say. Thanks. I appreciate that.
So where'd you grow up? Where were you born?
I was born in Iowa, actually, Ames, Iowa, where Iowa State University is.
Yeah.
Because my dad was teaching there at the time. And then when I was about 10, we moved to a suburb of Detroit called Grosse Pointe. And I spent the rest of my childhood there till I went off to college.
What were mom and dad like? What were they doing?
My dad was a world history teacher. He taught at Grosse Pointe High. And my mother was a really fine violinist and pianist. And that's probably where my earliest influences came from.
Did you take some like piano lessons growing up?
Oh, God, yeah.
It's hard studying with your mom, too. Oh, man, I tried.
I fought it every step of the way. She started me at 5, and I couldn't go out and play until I practiced for an hour on the piano. So I at the time, I just hated that. I'd rather be outside playing. But now I'm glad I had that background because it's been very helpful.
Gave you a lot of structure.
Do you still play piano?
I do.
I didn't know that. Learn something new every day.
Well, I didn't say I played it well. Said I played.
I know what the notes are.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about chess. Like I know how the pieces move.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Exactly. No, it's really great to think in multiple lines instead of what we usually do, which is just think in a single line.
So how did trombone come into your life?
Well, it's really weird. my mother was determined to make a string player out of me. So she started me on violin when I was about 6 or something like that. I never liked it. So she moved me to cello. So I played cello for about 3 years, and I love that tessitura. My favorite instruments are in that tessitura. I stuck with it for about 3 years, but something didn't resonate with me. So in 5th grade, as I'm sure a lot of kids experienced, maybe not nowadays as much, but the music teacher brought in all the instruments, and they said, you can take any one of these instruments home and just play it if you want. And there was something about the trombone. I don't know if it was a slide or what it was that just fascinated me. So I took it home, and it just resonated, so I stuck with it.
Do you feel like you learned some lessons from playing strings beforehand and piano that like helped?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it was hugely beneficial, even though I eventually didn't stick with them.
So Michigan, I mean, classically been a good place to have a high school music education, it seems like. So you decided to keep pursuing it. And were you listening to a lot of different types of music back then, or was it just like a lot of classical music in the home?
Well, because my mother was a classical musician, that's what I mainly heard up until probably high school. And then once I'd pretty much focused in on the trombone, I started listening to a lot more things. And one of the earliest albums I ever remember listening to that just had a huge influence on me was called Tootie's Trombones. I don't know if you've ever heard of that album, but it was 10 LA studio musicians, Frank Rosalino, all those guys in that era. They did this album of arrangements for 10 trombones and rhythm.
Oh,
and
man.
It's some of the most incredible playing I'd ever heard. And that really influenced me a lot. I remember that vividly.
Yeah, I don't know the Tootie's trombone. I'm going to check that one out.
No, you should. It's even by today's standards, I think it's fabulous. And the other one was Herbie Green did a couple albums, and I thought those were fabulous too.
So you were digging the West Coast sound a little bit already,
I suppose.
So I mean, it makes complete sense that you end up going to the University of Michigan, which is one of the best music schools, especially then. Were you there with John Kitzman for like a year or something?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was a freshman when he was in his senior year or his 5th year there.
I can only imagine what he was like.
You probably didn't you study with him a little bit?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, you know that.
Well, but him in a senior year in college, I imagine he was very serious, just like you were.
Yeah, I was kind of a smart ass at that point, so he didn't appreciate that too much.
Oh, man. How was your experience at Michigan?
It was good. Well, long story short, because my mother was a professional musician, she knew how hard it was to succeed as a performer. So she very gently tried to persuade me to do something else and just do music for enjoyment. So actually, when I was at Michigan, I wasn't majoring in music. I was in pre-law.
Wow.
I was, considering doing that because of all the horror stories she told me about, the profession. But about halfway through, I realized I don't want to be a lawyer. So that's when I auditioned and transferred to the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia.
And who was teaching there at the time?
Dee Stewart.
Oh, wow.
And Glenn Dodson.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That must have been a big life change.
It was a big life change. But once I made the decision to move forward with that, I wanted to give it 110%. So that was a good place to do it.
Okay. And so you're just like firmly on the I want to play in an orchestra someday track.
Yeah. I think at that point, I became very focused and very determined and was willing to give it everything I had. At some point, because I had done a fair amount of solo competitions when I lived in Michigan. They had something there called Michigan Youth Week. I don't know if they still have it, but I got to play a solo with the Interlochen Academy Orchestra, and I love playing solos, and I considered that briefly, but at the time, at least especially in this country, it seem as viable as maybe having some kind of regular job and doing that, in addition to that, where you have security. And so I really focused on trying to get an orchestra position. Yeah.
Were you a pretty intense practicer at that age?
Yeah.
Like how many hours were you putting in?
Probably for a period of 3 or 4 years, I was doing about 6 hours a day.
Hear that, kids?
Yeah.
Not all at the same time. And one nice thing about Curtis is they didn't burden you with a lot of classes.
That's nice.
So, so you had time to do that. Yeah, I think if you're really serious about having a career in music performance, at some point in your life, usually, late teens, early 20s, you have to really, really put in the time and make that 100% of your focus. I think that's really important. So that's what I did then.
Man, that's cool. So, okay. So when did you start taking auditions or did you start taking them while in school or?
My first audition was for the Detroit Symphony when I was in high school.
Wow.
My teacher at the time, who was Alan Chase, he was principal of the Detroit Symphony at that time. He got me into the audition when I was 18.
Was that?
I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Was that the audition that Tanny won?
Dennis Smith.
Oh, Dennis Smith, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But, it was a great introduction into the atmosphere at an audition. It was very eye-opening. It was really great. So, yeah, that was the first one I took.
Just speaking of taking auditions so young, do you think it's important for people who are very serious to start taking auditions at a young age so they can get used to the experience? Because we can do mock auditions, we can do simulated fight or flight response by getting a heart rate going, but there's nothing quite like the real thing. So do you think it's important to start young?
I know there's two schools of thought on this. Some teachers firmly believe that you shouldn't go to an audition until you're really ready to win it or to compete for it. I don't really agree with that. Some people are afraid that you might make a bad impression that might carry on down the road. But with screens nowadays, I don't know that that's a big deal. The only negative I can see from it, if it totally traumatizes you from taking other auditions. But other than that, I think it's really an eye-opening experience. I probably would recommend it. Anytime you can get accepted to an audition, because as you guys know, they don't come along every day, and the experience is invaluable, I think.
Yeah, I remember when there used to be a very active online trombone forum. There was this topic of nerves and auditions, and young, dumb Nick, when I was 18 years old at the Interlochen Arts Academy, I started saying, I'd never get nervous for anything. I've auditioned for my high school band and never gotten nervous. And Colin Williams, of all people, responded and he said, well, no offense, you're young, you haven't taken a professional audition, you'll see. And I remembered that moment after I took my first audition for a real job, and I got so nervous. And I remembered that conversation with Colin, and I actually printed it out and gave it to him a couple of years ago and said, yeah, you were right.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
And so was San Francisco your first job?
No, I was principal in the Denver Symphony for 1 year.
Okay.
Back when it was the Denver Symphony.
And now it's Colorado Symphony.
Now they actually had a really good contract in those days, and then they kind of went belly up and reformed. But yeah, I was there for a year, and then San Francisco.
Okay. And then your life kind of was set for a long time.
Well, it's a great orchestra, and as you know, there's a lot of luck involved in winning an audition as well as ability, and I was thrilled.
What do you remember?
Absolutely thrilled.
What do you remember from like that audition? Was it Ozawa that hired you?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. I just remember that there were like 6 rounds.
Ooh.
Long day.
And there was no screen. So there was 3 rounds of solo, then there was a section round, and then we had to come back the next day and play with the orchestra during a rehearsal. And I remember one of the things we played was the end of Brahms 2. And I totally smashed the high D And I thought, oh, that's it. You know,
smashed in a bad way.
It's all over. Yeah. But I guess it didn't matter.
That's always good to hear, because like a lot of people think you have to be perfect in an audition, right?
Well, we're kind of taught that way, that in order to win an audition, you have to be note perfect. And that really does stifle you in a certain way that's probably not healthy.
Well,
say something.
Yeah, well, you kind of took my comment away, but to kind of build on that, I think it's unfortunate that people who are trying to win auditions and are coming from a place where they've never sat in an audition panel themselves, that experience too tells you so much about the audition procedure, and it informs you like that the committee is not against you. The committee is with you, in that if you miss a note, I mean, obviously there's a point of diminishing returns. If you miss too many notes, that's a problem. But if you miss a note, it's not the end of the world. And so I think that I wish that people who were striving to be musicians could have that experience of being on the other side of the panel, because it does educate you so much, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. So it's important that we all tell our students, make sure they understand that, you know, that's not a deal breaker.
So I'd love to talk about, you know, principal trombone, San Francisco Symphony of 34 years, hired by Ozawa. So if my calculations are correct, you've been through 4 music directors. Edo de Wart, is that the pronunciation? And
very good.
Blomstedt, where I would love to talk about those amazing recordings, those Decca recordings you put out during then. And then, of course, Michael Tilson Thomas. And that's when you retired, I believe, during his
Well, I was with Michael
tenure,
for 12
right?
ye's. Yeah. But so,
okay.
Yeah, because he was music director there for 25 years.
Looking back, like when you first started, I mean, what was your experience like? Was there a lot of learning going on while having the job?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I probably won the audition before I was totally ready for the job, because I was 25 and I had to sort of learn on the job. And I realized that right away. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you get there. So yeah, there was a lot of learning on the job. I tried to pick out good musicians in the orchestra that I could learn from. I talked to a lot of people, you know, about things to do and things not to do. And one of the hardest things for especially a young musician coming into an orchestra is a lot of the people are a lot older than you. And you come in as a principal and you're supposed to be a leader, but you have to really walk a fine line, because, like, for instance, the second trombone and bass trombone at the time were old enough to be my fathers. Yeah, at first I wasn't as tactful as I maybe should have been, and that's something that comes with youth, I think. And you have to understand as a young person that everybody's doing the best they can, and it's really important to have respect for all your colleagues, and you're going to get more cooperation in the long run if you do that anyway.
That's a huge lesson. That really is.
It was a hard one.
Yeah. Our new principal trombonist came in at 21 years old, and, you know, everyone around him is much older, and I'm really proud of him, how he's handled himself as very mature for 21 years old. You know, that's got to be hard, as it was for you when you were 25, you said?
Yeah. Well, he probably got some good advice, you know, which is great.
Yeah.
If you have people that can kind of tell you ahead of time, you know, what to do and what not to do.
Did you feel your confidence kind of growing over time as you got more experiences and grew into the job a little?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I was always pretty confident, but I at least was smart enough to know there were a lot of things I didn't know or could get better at. And my goal was to just continually get better.
So what do you remember from, you know, the Ozawa years?
Fabulous. Just, I idolized that man. He conducted us at Curtis when I was there a couple of times. And I said to myself right there, I will audition for any orchestra that he is music director of.
Wow. That's a
And,
bold statement.
yeah, I was young, and he had an amazing presence on the podium, the way he moved, the energy. At that time he was probably in his 30s, maybe.
Wow.
I don't know. He was young. But at any rate, so yeah, I auditioned for him in San Francisco, and we actually used to play tennis together, and we had a softball team, and he loved to play softball. And every time we go on tour, he'd arrange these softball games for us in like Japan.
That's fun.
Like that. It was really great. No, I idolized him at that time in my life, just because he had the ability to make me play better than I thought I could, which is a great quality for a conductor to have.
That's like the best. He was pretty intense, right, on the podium?
Yes, very.
Demanded the best.
He never quite mastered the English language, but he was very intense. Yeah.
And he hired you, so he clearly has excellent taste in trombonist, right?
I say that all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about. I'm not as familiar with Edo Devart.
Well, I don't want to bore the listeners, but he came in at a period when the orchestra and the opera split in San Francisco. Up until that time, the people who played in the symphony also did the San Francisco Opera. And in 1980, they split, and you had to make a decision whether you would go with the opera or the symphony.
Oh, wow.
And so because of that, there were a lot of openings in both orchestras. So Devart at that time was there to really build the orchestra with a lot of new members into a really great ensemble. So he kind of had a reputation as a orchestra builder, so to speak.
Stabilizing presence.
Yeah. We got a lot of new members at that time, so the orchestra really, the face of it really changed.
That's interesting. Did you ever consider going the opera route?
I did, because I loved playing the operas and hearing those incredible singers. But at that time, I really wanted to be on stage. So I went with the orchestra.
Also, a late night at the opera is very different than a late night at the symphony.
Yeah, I remember we did this Strauss opera, Die Frauen Schatten. I don't know if you know that opera, but fabulous opera and fabulous brass parts. But man, I think it was like 4 hours long, something like that. That wasn't unusual.
Yeah, and 4 hours is that's like a medium long opera. It's not even a long opera.
Right.
Yeah, play Meistersinger and we'll talk.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh man, wow, that's fascinating. I never knew the orchestra split like that, and that had to be tough. And I imagine you had a lot of colleagues that left. So during that time, that's when Davies opened, right? 1980.
Yes, and that was what allowed the move to happen.
That had to be exciting.
It was.
So
yeah. Anytime you get a new home.
Before then, were you playing in the War Memorial?
Yes.
Oh, I never knew that. Wow.
Yeah. Which is a wonderful, beautiful hall, but a terrible acoustic for an orchestra.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So what was the change like? Did you have to change how you played a little bit? Was it a whole new acoustic?
No, but they did a lot of experimenting with risers and non-risers. I never liked playing on risers, but the audience likes risers because they can see everything, see all the players. So we ended up being on risers. We did a lot of experimenting with different configurations that year. Halls are hard, as you know, Nick, living in New York. Halls are hard to get right.
Yeah, I've played a couple times in the new David Geffen, and they still don't have it 100% tuned in. They're still working on it,
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's different paneling, and instead of having risers, it's actually built into the stage, like on hydraulics. So like the back of the stage can raise up, or like, and then there's a tier, there's like 4 tiers, and they can either be completely flat or you can raise the back one up furthest and, have tiers like that. And so they're experimenting with all that stuff, like you said, risers, and then they have acoustic paneling. They have like stuff on the ceiling, all this stuff, and they're tweaking it endlessly.
You don't remember what they opened, the concert that opened Davies Do you?
Yes,
What
I do.
was it?
Beethoven 5. I think the Roman Carnival Overture, maybe. And then this new piece by David Del Tredici.
Wow.
I don't know if you know that name or not.
Sounds familiar.
But then I can't remember the title, but yeah, I think that was the opening.
Yeah, start with Beethoven 5. It's just right down the fairway.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
That's
of course,
awesome.
yeah.
Did you notice like an uptick in like audience? Like, did the city get really excited once the new hall came out?
Absolutely. And you know, the San Francisco is great for the arts. It always has been. They really support the ballet, opera, and symphony really, really well. I mean, COVID obviously for everyone just kind of upended a lot of things, but up until then, I mean, the whole time I was playing the orchestra, almost every house was full, 4 nights a week.
That's amazing.
Which is great. Yeah.
That'd be so fun.
Well, it's better than playing to an empty house. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if you were still in the orchestra when I mean, you were when I first moved out there to San Francisco, and then you retired. But I remember once, I don't know if the symphony still has this, they had a subscription series in Cupertino, and it wasn't marketed well or something like that. And we went down and played Alpine Symphony to like 20 people. I swear. I mean, there were definitely more people on stage than there were in the audience. And that was a very odd feeling.
Yeah, that run out I never understood. I think they've got a really nice fee for going down there.
All that Silicon Valley money.
Yeah.
How have you noticed I mean, you've gotten to experience San Francisco from the late 70s. I mean, how have you noticed the city? I mean, it must have changed so much in your experience, and artistically and just as the city.
The big thing in San Francisco over the years was the tech industry. A lot of things were based there. And as I'm sure you're aware, it's one of the most expensive cities to live in the country. So that's one of the things I've noticed. It's just gotten more and more expensive. Now, you know, everything's kind of screwy right now because a lot of people are working from home. So there's not quite as many people in downtown San Francisco, but it's just gotten very expensive to live there.
I imagine if you bought a house in the late 70s, that's pretty nice.
Yes.
Much harder to get in now.
You know, when you look at orchestra salaries throughout the country, compared with the cost of living, it gets skewed a little because San Francisco is one of the top paying orchestras in the country, but it's also one of the most expensive to live in. I think they did a survey once. They compared the orchestra's salary with the cost of living, and the orchestra that made the most money, taking that into consideration, was the Pittsburgh Symphony, because the cost of living in there is so reasonable.
We're trying to keep that a secret. More people move here.
You always hear Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, St. Louis, like those all, you know, you fare a lot better, even though on paper you're making less money than New York or San Francisco or LA.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about these Decca London recordings. So Blomstedt was your conductor from 1985 to 95, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's when I think, just from the outside, is when San Francisco really, the world started hearing you guys on a consistent basis with these First of all, they're just recorded so well. All those Bruckner recordings. I've written down there's 29.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Man. So what do you remember from those experiences?
What I remember vividly, and at the time we didn't like it, they took the orchestra and they moved us into the audience a little bit. And then they partitioned the orchestra like you would see in a recording studio sometimes, so that there was a partition between us and the horns and us, and they really cordoned off different sections, and we all were mic'd. All the sections were mic'd individually. And the negative that was there was quite a big reverb because we were out further into the hall, and we couldn't hear each other as well. So we just had to kind of go on muscle memory from what we did at the concert. But the way the recordings turned out, to my ear, was some of the best quality sound, especially brass, low brass sound and balance that we ever got. even with the later MTT recordings. I agree with you. I think that the quality of sound of the orchestra was warm, and yet you could hear all the sections really, really well.
So there were people not on stage doing the recording. You were like,
no, they were on stage. They just built a partition into the audience so they could move the orchestra into the hall.
I see.
To create even more reverb.
It's like Sebastian, I don't know if you've ever gone and seen mostly Mozart here in New York. They do the same thing. They build a stage out like maybe 10 rows into the auditorium. So the back row of the orchestra is like the front row of the real stage sort of thing.
Because they know the sweet spot's more like central in the building.
I guess so. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Well, I think a lot of recording companies would prefer to have more reverb and then tone it down rather than have a dead space and have to create the reverb. That's the feeling I got from talking to them.
All of my...
Because it's easier to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. Like, so all my audiophile friends that are just obsessed with like really high fidelity sound are just all obsessed with the Decca London recordings. They say that's some of the best recorded sound that we've had in a long time.
They knew exactly what they were doing. They really did. I agree with you.
Do you have a favorite album from that time?
You know, I don't really. We did like you said, we did a lot, but the one that people always talk to me about is the Matisse de Mahler. That's the one that people seem to resonate, especially low brass players. They seem to like that one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, Nielsen 4 is also a great one too.
Yeah. The nice thing about Blomstedt is he did great repertoire for low brass. He did a lot of late 19th century, early 20th century Germanic repertoire. We did a lot of Nielsen, Hindemith, Strauss, Bruckner, Sibelius. You know, he just did great repertoire for us.
Keeping you in shape.
Keeping us honest.
Yeah.
No days off. What was a typical, did you have like a routine, like a concert day routine as far as like how you warmed up, how long you warmed up, how you ate dinner, when you got to the hall, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, I know some athletes have routines that they get, and it makes them feel secure because they have the same routine every time before a game. Kind of like I was like that too. I didn't want to eat any later than 5 o'clock because I didn't like playing on a full stomach, and sometimes, especially as I got a little older, I would take a nap if I had a rehearsal and a concert. Before that, if I had a rehearsal and a concert, I wouldn't even play during the afternoon. But if I didn't have a rehearsal in the morning, then I'd do some playing in the morning usually. Because we had four to five concerts a week usually.
Oh man. Yeah, so you have to balance. Like you can't be playing too much at home.
You do have to balance a little bit, yeah.
And then you add your teaching on top of that. How many?
Yeah.
So was it mainly at San Francisco Conservatory, and then later on Colburn?
Well, when I was playing in the orchestra, I only taught at the San Francisco Conservatory, other than the year I took a leave to go teach at Northwestern.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's nice because it was pretty. Was it pretty nearby, or is that just the new location is nearby Davies?
The new location, yeah. In fact, I think the year you were there, Nick, was the year it opened.
Yes, it was the first year.
Yeah. So, and now they have a new building, which is really nice.
They do? Really?
Yeah. Which has dorms now, and
oh wow,
and a new concert hall, recital hall.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah.
Your Nick's tuition dollars help pay for it.
I only went there for one semester.
He was there for a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
scared him away.
Yeah, I didn't start teaching at Culver until I left the orchestra.
Okay. So 10 years with Blomstedt, and then this guy Michael Tilson Thomas comes along in 1995, and I read one of the longest tenured conductors of a major orchestra. So obviously he was well liked there, it seemed like.
He retained audience love for pretty much the whole time he was there, I think, and critics as well. With most orchestras, no matter who the conductor is, you have a love affair, and then after a certain point, you know everything they're going to say. So it's harder for a conductor later in their tenure sometimes. But yeah, he did a lot of great things with the orchestra. He really did. A lot of great recordings, we did a video project with him that was called, I can't think of what it's called.
Something
now,
the score, keeping the score.
Keeping score. Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Yeah. And that was really beneficial for introducing audiences to classical music in a really interesting way. Yeah. He did a lot of great things for the orchestra. We won a lot of Grammys with him.
Yeah, one for Mahler 3, I see.
And 7.
And 7.
Yeah.
You had a small part in that one.
Yeah. Small part, yeah.
Did a few things. What do you remember from that Mahler 3 recording? Is it one of those things that you can go back and listen to, or is it like hard to do it?
It's a little hard to do it because a few years before that, I developed a condition called TMJ. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have it too, so I know it.
Well, again, without boring the listeners too much, how it affected me is there's a ball and socket here, and my jaw, when I would, for instance, go between middle A and low A in that register, it would slip out of the socket and it wouldn't always go back in quickly.
That makes the Mahler 3 solo fun.
The absolute hardest solo for me to do with that condition was Mahler 3. So I sweated my way through that at the time.
And you still won a Grammy.
Well, there were a lot of other people involved in that recording.
I remember going to hear you play Mahler 3 at Carnegie Hall when I was a student in. I had a class that went right until like maybe 30 minutes before the downbeat, and by the time I got to Carnegie Hall, got my ticket, and got into the tier, the upper tier, they wouldn't let me in because the concert already started, and I finally begged usher to let me in, and I got in like one bar before the solo started, and had to stand in the back there and watch from there. But I got there just in time.
Mark's like, you're that guy that walked in and distracted me right before.
Boy, to be able to play that in that hall, though, that was really great.
Yeah, it sounded incredible.
I mean,
that's a great hall.
I mean, what do you do after that? I mean, you played Mahler 3 in Carnegie Hall with one of the best orchestras in the world. You're like, well, I guess it's good I stayed in music.
Yep.
You're like, yep, that's all right. That was a good day at the office.
Yeah, no
that's
kidding.
Really cool. Tell me about what your colleagues mean to you. You pretty much had, after the two people you got hired with, you had a pretty long tenure with the same section, right?
I did. I played with Floyd Cooley, who was our tubist for 25 years. John Engelkus, who was our bass trombonist for about 25 years. And Paul Welcomer for about 15. So, yeah.
What do those guys mean to you?
I was extremely lucky to have. I mean, I don't know if either of you have had a situation where there was a lot of friction in your section.
Yes. Yes.
It's not fun. It's not fun. And I was so lucky because I had colleagues who were easy to work with and supportive. I mean, a section can make a principal player look really bad if they want to. And I was lucky that Paul, as my second, was just always so supportive, and John as well. So yeah, I feel very fortunate because I've heard all the horror stories.
I mean, you must have had such a chemistry.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I had sort of learned through the years what to do and what not to do in how to lead a section and how to talk to colleagues about things that you want to accomplish. So, you know, luckily they were tolerant of me when I was younger and maybe not as skilled at that, you know, and then, you know, it got to the point. And if you've ever been in this situation, you know how great it is. We didn't really have to talk about a lot of stuff because we'd already talked it out. They knew how I was going to play things. I didn't have to, you know, talk to them about it. That's a great feeling when you just have a section that everybody knows how you're going to do it.
I think a lot of students don't realize that in the professional world, it's not really common to have a sectional. It's not really common to talk about things for better or worse, depending on the situation. There's not really, people don't have that time in their life really. So, you know, it's kind of on you as an individual to show up and be understanding of what your role is. Like as a bass trombone player, I'm listening up to the principal, trying to match length and volume and style. And, you know, the principal's job is to dictate that. And it's like, if you're in a good situation like you were, it's, you know, it's golden, you know, it just happens.
Well, and as you both know, we play as a section more than any other brass section.
Right.
Trumpets and horns quite often play in twos and twos. We almost always play in threes or fours. So how we sound as a section is really important.
Never thought about that way. Yeah. So you mentioned, you know, when you're younger and learning how to communicate, and I mean, is there any specific wisdom you can impart on how to talk to a section when you're in a leadership position? How to, maybe you're hearing something that you want to change or improve. Are there some like do's and don'ts on the right way to communicate that sort of thing?
Yeah. What you don't want to say is the problem with you is.
People don't like to hear that.
I'm sorry.
You know what your problem
usually
is.
Not. You know, really what it comes down to is treating everyone, all your colleagues, with respect and understanding that they are all trying to do the best they can. Those two things are really important to remember for any professional, I think. So when you're talking about doing something, you talk about doing it as a group, you know, instead of saying, I think you're sharp or flat, you could say, hey, can we try that passage? You know, I'm having a little trouble, you know, kind of feeling this. And so that everybody feels invested in the common goal, rather than setting yourself up as an authority that you're talking to them as an authority figure.
I love that. Does that make sense?
Gold. Good advice.
That's gold. And it's hard to know that. It's hard to know how to do that instinctually, because especially when you're passionate about something and you just don't understand why someone else isn't doing it to the level that you're doing it. You're like, you can't just talk to a colleague in an intense way, or how you would talk to yourself, maybe, you know, because often we're really hard on ourselves, you know, and we might want to communicate the same way to other people. And that is not, it's not a productive way, right?
Well, and just think about it. As performers, we're all kind of crazy. I mean, we spend so much time alone in a practice room when we're younger. And our goal is, we're like hyper specialists. Our goal is to get as good as we possibly can on this one instrument. And so we get very invested in this, and we expect everybody to be the same way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I want to talk about your teaching a little bit. What do you think What do you think is the most important trait of a teacher? What do you think is the most important trait of a successful student?
Boy. As far as a teacher goes, I think the most important, well, there may be more than one. I mean, number one, you want to find ways to always encourage the student to be the best they can be. That's and invest in them a confidence that they can do that. That's really important. Obviously, your one of your jobs is to point out things that they need to improve on. But I think it's really important that you give the student that confidence that, you know, if they do this and this and this, then, you know, they can be successful. And, you know, I have had students in the past where I've actually said to them, you know, I really think you should reconsider this, maybe think about it, whether this really is for you. And if I say that to a student and they go, screw him, man, this is what I want to do. That's great. If they, you know, have that kind of determination, that's great. But as far as a student, I think a student, you have to have at some point this burning desire to succeed, to be successful, and to have a clear focus on that. I think a lot of times students think they do, but maybe they don't really.
There's a lot of distractions out there nowadays.
A lot of distractions, yeah.
You know, you told me when I was a student, you told me, I hope I don't get it wrong because this is how I remember it. You told me basically along the lines of, it's important to pick a deadline. If you don't have your version of success by that point, that you should probably reconsider it, doing something else. Like, how long can you possibly go striving for this, you know, and honestly not living your best life? Because if you're not gainfully employed, it's pretty hard to live your best life. But I took that very much to heart when you told me that. And I chose the age of 29 for myself. I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if this is something you say to all your students, but for me, that was really important to hear. I needed to hear it. And I think that lit a fire under me. There was already a fire, but it poured a little kerosene on that fire to really get to that final step of crossing the finish line and winning an audition. Because it wasn't that long after that I won a job. I guess thank you for that, but I don't know if that's something that was a one-off comment from you or if that's something you instill in all your students.
No, it's not a one-off.
Okay.
It's what I did when I was at Curtis. I gave myself 5 years after I left Curtis to either get a job or get close to getting one. Like if I was in the finals of 2 or 3 auditions. And at the end of that 5 years, if I felt like nothing was happening, you know, and it wasn't happening, I gave myself permission to reevaluate. Because like you, I have always done better with goals. So no, that's something I think I remember from your interview with Christian Lindbergh, he did something similar.
Yes.
He gave himself to age 29 or something. I don't remember what it was.
Like 4 weeks after he started the trombone to have a job in a major orchestra.
Yeah, it's May, and he's like, if I don't have a job by September, I swear.
No, but I like you said, Nick, I think it focuses your thinking, and it structures you in a good way. So I'm glad. Yeah,
that was that, and you know, we had multiple lessons at Music Academy. I just want to talk about this from experiencing your teaching personally. I remember, you know, all of our lessons, you were very, you know, matter of fact, like very clear, very concise with your delivery on what you wanted me to do differently or what you wanted me to work on. And I really appreciated that. And there was one lesson leading into me going to Music Academy. I had a string of auditions where I was finalist or runner up or only finalist, like a lot of like really close to landing the gig. And I don't know if it's something I did or if it's something that you just said, I think Nick needs to hear this. For the first like 20 minutes of the lesson, you were basically like, you know what? You've been the bridesmaid, but that does not mean you're going to be the bride next time. Like, you've gotten 99% of the way there. You need to like work that much harder to get 100% of the way there. Like, don't give up now. Don't rest on your laurels. And you said it in the calmest way, but in a lot of ways, it was like one of the harder lessons I've ever had. Cause you kind of held, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, you held a mirror up to me and made me realize that in that moment, I was probably relaxing a little bit too much and resting on my laurels a little bit too much. And I needed that little boost to like, okay, no, you haven't won a job. You need to continue working as hard as you were, a year ago or 6 months ago. Like, just because it's summer and it's beautiful Santa Barbara doesn't mean that you get to go to the beach all the time. You have to put in the work.
Yeah, that's great. You never know what somebody says to you when it might just kick in and help you in ways you might not even know at the time. I was the same way. Something my teacher would say to me didn't kick in until like 5 years later, and I go, oh, that's what he was saying.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's one of the most gratifying things about being a teacher, right? Is like someone might come back to you like I am right now and saying, thank you for this. You weren't even being mean. You were just being truthful. You were just telling me the truth, but it hit me. And it's like, whoa, okay, I needed to hear that. Time to hit the practice room. And, like I'm coming back to you, you could have someone come up to you and say this same thing and be like, I don't even remember that conversation, but I'm glad it helped.
Yeah. No, I think one of the things you most owe any student you work with is to level with them and say, okay, you're here. You need to be here. And to get here, you need to do this and this and this and this. Are you willing to do that? If you're willing to do that, then great. But you have to decide.
And the rest is up to them at that point.
Yeah.
I remember early on when I was teaching and feeling guilty about like, how do you get over the guilt of someone who wants to do this and doesn't succeed? Like, how do you get over that feeling of failure? And they told me that they went to Doc Marcellus and had the same question to him. And he said, you know what? You can only lead a horse to water. And it's totally true. It's like, I can't practice for you. I can't, make you record yourself. I can't, make you play mock auditions. You have to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Mark, do you think did you find yourself changing as a teacher over time at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When I first started teaching, I think I was too young to be a teacher. I mean, I taught mainly by playing. Listen to this, do this, do it this way. And as I got older, I got better at communicating and being able to look at the macro view of what we do and what you have to do to be successful. So I think some of that just comes with age. Hopefully you gain a little wisdom, and treating every student as an individual. I never would teach each person the same way because everybody has different needs.
That's hard.
And then, of course, all the different experiences I had playing with the great chamber music groups I've played with and this and that always adds into your experience as a teacher too.
Yeah. So you didn't just play in the orchestra. You were always finding other things to do with, you've played with Empire Brass Quintet, Center City, that Four of a Kind recording, Summit Brass recordings, the San Francisco Bay Brass Ensemble recording your own, album. Was that really important to you to do things outside of the orchestra?
Yes. And the reason, well, there were two reasons. I loved playing solos in chamber music, but also playing in an orchestra is absolutely great. I always loved it. But you can get sort of inflexible playing trombone orchestral parts all the time. And I liked the experience of going out and stretching myself in different ways, like playing in those two brass quintets, which was just a great experience, doing the four of a kind and doing some of brass. I mean, it stretches you in different ways that actually ultimately helps you as an orchestral player as well. So it all worked together. I needed all of that to feel like a complete musician at the time. Funny thing about that first four of a kind recording we did, we had never, the four of us, played together as a group until we did that recording. Wow. We didn't have any concerts.
Here we go.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, it just speaks to how great of musicians and players all four of you are individually, that you can do that kind of on the fly, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there have been other groups that had. I heard that very first, that famous Gabrielli record that the three orchestras did back in the late 60s, early 70s, they didn't have any, they just got together for that recording. They didn't do anything before that either. So,
the four of a kind. So, of course, the first track is Achieved.
And
I
love that one.
I was coaching high school. I teach at pre-college at Juilliard here, and I was coaching a pre-college or high school age trombone quartet, and I assigned them that. One of the kids, he said, "Oh, I don't like listening to new recordings because I like to play along with one recording and play it that way." And I said, "Okay, well, what recording are you listening to?" He goes, "The one from my summer camp last summer with my quartet." And I was like, I said, "Well," I said, give this a go. Give this a go. I think you're going to be amazed." And he said, "Well, I'm just telling you, we were really good." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And I just left it there. And the next week he came back and he was like, "I listened to that CD like 30 times this week. I've never heard anything like that." He was so blown away. And I loved it. I loved introducing a new generation to that CD.
Well, we all four of us have one big regret from that CD.
I know what it is.
We played
I know what it is. Because
No More Blues.
A different pre-college quartet, of course, listened to that album a million times, and they loved No More Blues. And so they have it stuck in their head with you guys swinging it. That's what you were going to say, right? You shouldn't swing bossa nova.
Exactly.
And you told me that when I was in San Francisco, that because I was telling, "Oh man, I grew up like, basically wearing out the record of Four of a Kind." And you told me almost immediately, you said, "Oh, we all regret swinging No More Blues. We shouldn't have done it." And so this quartet, you would not believe how hard they bucked when I said you got to play it straight. They're like, "But Four of a Kind swings it." And I was like, trust me, I have insider information. They regret doing so because Jobim was so adamant about it cannot be swung. And so I would play them recordings of Jobim himself playing it, playing recordings of Stan Getz, all this stuff. And they would still be like, "Nope, Four of a Kind swings it. We want to swing it." And I dug my heels in so hard on behalf of you and Four of a Kind so that we can.
Good for you.
So that we can try to erase swinging, even though it sounds great.
It sounds great.
It does.
Anything you want to say about that, Mark?
No, I'll just say that was our regret.
When I was at Music Academy, you forced the quartet that I was in to play it straight. And we were bucking in the same way because we grew up playing it and listening to it swung. And I can't tell you how hard it was to unlearn it swung and play it straight. It was so etched in my mind.
I get it. But
that speaks to how influential this CD was. It's like it was so groundbreaking, just like these four hot shots of the trombone world getting together and creating an all quartet record. It's like, especially at that time, there weren't many records of just pure trombone quartet. You had the Paris Trombone Quartet, the Slow Car, and that's about it,
Well, even to this day, it's probably my favorite ensemble to play in is a trombone quartet. I think it's a great sound. It's just very enjoyable.
Hey, let's go visit Mark in California.
Play some trombone quartets.
Well, Sebastian, you played in a really successful quartet, right?
Yeah, I played in one for about 9 years in New York. We did mainly like new American music, but that can be the Guidonian hand, and that can be some of the most challenging stuff if you want to talk about being in shape, that kind of stuff.
I remember seeing you guys play in Brooklyn, and you played the Philip Glass saxophone quartet.
I don't know whose idea that was.
Mark, I mean, you think you'd see smoke rising from their slides. It's so fast the whole time.
Who needs to breathe?
Endless. Yeah. And so you see these four guys, and it's a trombone player. You're just like, oh my God, you guys must be exhausted.
The amount of times I've heard in like new music things like, oh, it's about the struggle. It's okay if it sounds hard. I'm like, okay.
Well,
okay,
I'm struggling, so that's good.
Yeah. And I remember I hear these Bay Brass recordings pop up all the time of like, especially some of the holiday recordings sound amazing. You were one of the founding members of that, right?
Yeah. We did a Christmas recording in Grace Cathedral, and the recording engineer's name was Sean Murphy. I don't know if that name sounds familiar to you, but he's one of the top Hollywood recording engineers. And we were able to get him for that project, and he just did a great job of because that church, as a lot of churches, it's incredibly resonant, reverberant, and he nailed it. Man. That's a good recording. I agree.
That's one of the best church acoustics I've ever played in. Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark, you could literally spend like 2 weeks straight putting all the recordings you made back to back to back and just like listen to everything. There's so much out there. You must be so proud of that.
Well, all I can say is I'm just incredibly grateful for all the experiences I've had in music and the great musicians I've been able to play with over the years. I mean, to me, playing in a really good group is such a rewarding experience, whether it's a small group or a large group. And I've been really lucky. So, I'm very grateful for that.
So how's post-orchestra life been for you? What keeps you busy?
Well, I was teaching at Colburn up until I actually retired just when COVID hit.
Good timing.
Yeah. So you didn't have the pleasure of doing all the Zoom lessons and all that?
No, I did, because we had to finish out the year with Zoom lessons.
Oh, okay, yeah. So like the March to May,
2020.
March to May, you did that. Okay.
Yeah, and then for Music Academy that summer, we also had to do remote lessons.
The best.
So you guys know what that's all about. It's okay for a short amount of time, but it's not like being there in person.
It's okay for a one-off, I'd say, or maybe like once every 6 months you get a lesson with somebody and you do it over Zoom. I think that's perfectly fine, but like trying to guide someone in their growth over the internet, and they're in the middle of playing Hungarian March and then we've all had that one where it's like it plays catch up and it's like, okay, I want to say that your rhythm's bad, but you can truly blame the internet. It's like it was so frustrating.
Or a dog starts barking, or
oh God, can't believe it was real.
So what's keeping you busy nowadays?
Well, I'm still playing. I mean, I play in a group called Music of the Baroque in Chicago. I just got back from there doing some Christmas concerts with them. And I'm still doing some soundtracks out at Skywalker Ranch. I'm doing one in a couple weeks.
You've gotten to do a lot of those, I imagine.
Yeah, and I know, Nick, you did a few too while you were here.
I have a picture.
It's a great facility.
I have a picture of us doing the soundtrack to God of War 3, and that had something like 6 trombones or 8 trombones, and
I'm sure you play that video game all the time, Mark. Right?
All the time.
That was a pretty epically low brassy one. It was actually busy.
Yeah, it was. In fact, some of those video game soundtracks are just as good as the movie soundtracks.
Oh, definitely.
And the composers get big money for those.
The movie soundtracks now, because I do a decent amount of movie soundtracks here in New York. so much of it has moved to just like ambient sound where you're just playing like whole notes. And it's I mean, it's good money, but it's epically boring too.
Well, I think most movie composers think the range of the trombone is middle B flat to pedal B flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should just be a section of bass trombones, right? It's like you're
right.
absolutely right.
Yeah, they don't use too much imagination in the parts that we have usually. But that's all right.
Are there some movies that stand out that you recorded on, or video games?
Or video games?
Yeah. There is a movie which you've probably never heard of called Mars Attacks.
Oh yeah, of course,
old classic. Lots of theremin.
That was another one. I mean, the amount of instruments that we had to use in that. We had tuba, contrabass, bass trumpet, euphonium, tenor trombone. I mean, it was crazy, the instruments that he used in that.
That was such a crazy movie. Oh man.
So
yeah, it was crazy.
Someone told me that in LA in the studios they have shopping carts for the musicians, and they just go take the shopping cart to their car, throw in the 5 or 6 instruments, and wheel it in so they can do it in one trip.
Well, of course, you know the trick. The trick is to bring all the instruments that you play, and at some point during the session, convince the conductor that he needs to incorporate that instrument into the score, because then you get a doubling for every instrument.
Did you ever do that?
You play. No, because when you play principal, usually you don't. You get a principal scale, and it's the other guys that get the doubling. Usually,
well, I've heard the LA guys. If you're playing tenor, you play on a straight tenor. And bring one with a valve so that if it does go below an E, you're like, this has got to be a bass trombone. It's got to be a bass trombone. I'm sorry. I don't have the valve, you know?
Yeah, it's, you do learn the tricks of the trade for sure.
Yeah. Sebastian?
Rapid time?
Rapid time.
Okay, Mark, advice to your 18-year-old self.
Don't be afraid to fail.
Love that one. That's the best one. I wish I could just download that into every young musician's brain.
I wish I could download it in my brain.
It's a big one. It's a big one. Yeah.
What do you think your younger self would think of the life you've created today?
I actually think he'd be very pleased.
Do you have a recording that you're most proud of?
Well, I'm proud of just solo stuff. I'm proud of Trombonology. I think that's a good recording, and I think the recordings we did with 4 of a Kind are really good as well.
No disagreement there. Do you have a most memorable? I mean, you've gotten to tour all over the world and play in so many different halls. Do you have a concert experience that stands out as most memorable? It's a tough one.
Yeah, that is a tough one. There's any number that I could mention, but I think it would be the time I played the Rouse trombone concerto with our orchestra. It was the second performance in the U.S. after Joe Alessi's premiere of it, and I heard Joe play it, and I just fell in love with the piece. I think it's a great concerto, very difficult, but I think it shows the trombone really well, and so I did it with San Francisco, did 4 concerts with them, and I worked my tail off preparing for that, and I was happy with the outcome. And so the fact that I loved the concerto and I wanted people to hear it, combined with the fact that I was able to do it with our orchestra, that was great.
Yeah, the piece pretty much plays itself, right? Real easy.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
There's nothing like that feeling of having a big opportunity, putting in all of the hard work that you know you're capable of, and doing your best. I mean, that's like the best feeling, right?
Well, you know what they say, you don't practice it until you get it right. You practice it until you can't get it wrong.
I love that.
Putting in some of those 6-hour Curtis sessions. That's awesome. Are there recordings of that somewhere that we can hear? Or is that just live?
It was live. I mean, I have recordings of it, but no, we didn't make a commercial recording of it.
Oh man, I'd love to hear that sometime. There's a billboard that everyone in the world can see, and you can write anything on it. What would you write?
Gratitude.
Love it. How do you want people to, when all is said and done, how do you want people to look back at your musical career? How do you want them to remember it?
Oh man. It's so funny. I'm reminded of there's a football coach named Mike Leach. I don't know if you know that name or not.
Yeah, he just passed, right?
Yeah, he just passed, and they showed an interview that a guy was interviewing, and one of the questions to him was, "How do you want to be remembered when you're gone?" And he said, "That's for somebody else to say. I'll be dead." I don't care."
That's good.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, I mean, I just, 300-400 years from now, nobody's going to remember anything. Time is so fleeting, I just hope I'm remembered as a good musician, good trombonist.
People studying that trombonology recording. Any regrets?
Musically, you're speaking of, right?
You can answer that however you want.
No, I really I don't have any regrets other than I wish I'd learned jazz improvisation when I was young, because I'm starting to try to learn how to do more of it now, and I think it's a really good way to stretch yourself as a player, and to be really nimble on the instrument in all keys, and I think it's really a valuable tool for young players, even if they're not thinking of a jazz career or anything. Just learn how to improvise. I think it's really a great thing to know.
So when we come visit you and play quartets, we're just gonna hit the Jamie Aebersold's hard, just do basic B flat blues over and over.
I'm telling you, it gives you incredible appreciation for the musicians that do it well. They make it sound so easy.
It's a totally different way of thinking, right? It's like if we approach it as classical musicians and try to understand a million rules how to do it, it's just not the way to do it. It's much more intuitive and emotional and color and sound, and
yeah, it makes you go in a direction that you're not used to going, which is really good, I think.
Is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you would like to add?
Not really, other than I would just, for any young aspiring trombonists that might be listening to this, I just encourage you to, especially when you're younger, don't pigeonhole yourself. Try and expose yourself to as many musical experiences as you can. Play chamber music, play solos, play in band, play in orchestra, listen to great musicians on other instruments beside the trombone, because you can learn so much. Singers, just expose yourself to as many experiences as you can, because as we all know, getting a job in a major symphony orchestra is not a given for anybody. And I think it's good to have as many skills as you can going forward.
I love that. Is there any particular musicians that you love listening to, non trombone players or soloists that came through the orchestra a lot that really spoke to you?
Oh gosh. I loved listening to Pavarotti sing. I mean, when he was in his prime. Fischer Dieskau. I don't know if you know that name. I don't know if you ever heard him sing the Brahms 4 serious songs, but I like listening to singers because it's so close to what we do.
Yeah, you have such a vocal approach to your playing too. That's really has always come through in how I hear you too. So that's really cool.
Is there something that young up and coming trombonists don't do enough of that they need to do more of?
Well, I think what I just said is answered.
Yeah. So let me ask one more then. Actually, it's a two-parter. Favorite piece of music, least favorite piece of music.
Oh yeah, good one. Least favorite?
Least favorite. Yeah, I want to know favorite and least favorite.
Well, there's different categories. If I was stranded on a desert island and could only have one piece of music with me, it would be the Strauss's Four Last Songs.
Love that.
I've actually played those on the trombone in recital because I love them so much. But I think that's like, for me, that's just incredible. As far as orchestrally, I mean, Rite of Spring, Alpine Symphony, there's a whole bunch of them. It's as you know, it's so funny because there are some pieces in orchestra that you could play 1,000 times and never get tired of them. And there's other pieces you play once and you never want to hear them again.
You're like, well, that's how that goes. Had my experience.
Yeah. I remember playing, I won't say the composer's name, but it was a premiere of a piece by a pretty well-known composer with Philly Orchestra. And right when we get done, and it was a violin concerto. And when we get done with it, it's I was thinking to myself, oh, this is such a piece of garbage. Like, we get done with it and the applause is happening. And Eric turns to me and he goes, well, it's a really terrible piece of music, but at least it's super long.
Yeah, that's good.
It's like, man, how did you know? I was just thinking the same thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think we all appreciate composers that know how to write for our instrument.
Yes.
And you can always tell when a composer doesn't. So I appreciate it when somebody does understand how to write for the instrument.
Yeah, there's so many composers. There's so many composers that just think we're so limited in what we can do. And while there are technical limitations to the trombone versus a trumpet or French horn, the bar at which they think we can't exceed is so low sometimes. They're like, I wrote you eighth notes. Is that going to be okay? It's like, I think I'll figure it out.
I'll shed it.
Yeah.
How many times in your life have you heard someone say, I never knew a trombone could do that?
So many times.
Absolutely.
So many times. Which in a way I think is an advantage because it's a fresh thing to a lot of audiences when they hear like a trombone choir for the first time or technical things on trombone. It's like the violin's not going to surprise a lot of people still, I think.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much. I've had limited audition experiences with you, so it's nice or email exchanges. So it's been really nice to talk to you a little bit and get to know you a little bit better. And obviously I hope to cross paths with you in real life at some point, but what a wonderful career you are having and have had. And the amount you've contributed is just incredible. And so congratulations. And thank you for inspiring so many people.
Well, thank you both for the opportunity to do this, and really, I really appreciate the work you were doing. Keep it up.
Thanks, and we really appreciate having you on. And I every summer I end up in Northern California, so I'll look you up.
I'm here.
Yeah, and
you don't drink wine out there in Sonoma, do you?
Oh, is there wine out here?
Yeah. I think they have like some strawberry daiquiri wine, or and soon your neighbor is going to be Joe Alessi, huh?
Yeah.
Soon enough.
Yeah, believe it or not. In fact, John Ingocus lives here too now, so we're 3/4 of the Sonoma Trombone Quartet now.
Boom. Where you are, it's just absolutely beautiful, right?
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
I've never been.
Yeah, it's the wine country. It's beautiful up here.
Yeah,
I think they called Sonoma the Topeka of California.
Is that what they call it? I didn't know that, Nick.
Yeah, I tried to think of the most absurd thing I could say. That was it. So
yeah.
How many wine bottles are in your house right now?
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah. That's
that's a
fridge.
That's a wine fridge.
There's a wine fridge back there. Yeah.
I like that.
I tend to collect
Nice
good cabs and then let them sit for 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So is that the oldest one you have right now? Is like about 10 years?
2010 is the oldest one I have.
Oh man. Our imaginary quartet session is going to be amazing in my head. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so
For the
much.
rest of your day.
Take care.
Cool.
Happy New Year.
All right.
Happy
Thanks
New
so
Year,
much,
guys.
Mark. Happy New Year.
You too.
Yeah, I forgot to say that. Yeah. All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. I wasn't ready.
You don't have to be ready. We're just
No,
talking.
but I just don't want
We're
to say
two
the same
humans
thing over and
talking. Well, don't think about it. The second you start thinking about it, it gets worse. And I'm definitely putting this conversation we're having right now on the podcast, just so you know.
Thank you. Well, I was just going to say, I want to say, no, never mind. I'm not even going to say it because I can't gather my thoughts right now. Go
Mark
on. What do you want to
Lawrence.
know?
Mark Lawrence, what an amazing player. What an amazing human. I mean, we only talk to amazing players and humans on this thing, so no big surprise there. But, I mean, what did it mean to you studying with him?
Well, I mean, just to be clear, he wasn't like my primary teacher. Just for, I studied with him at Music Academy for a summer. And then I had some like one-off lessons when I was in San Francisco, and he coached a trombone quartet I was in. I think I touched a lot upon what we worked on when we had lessons, but yeah, he's I found him to be very to the point with his teaching. There wasn't much like flowery language, which I appreciate actually. You get like straight down to the point, but he's very kind, very warm, but isn't afraid to tell you how it is. And that's what I needed. That's really what I needed in that moment in time. It's easy to say this about a lot of teachers, but one way I really learned from him is at Music Academy. I don't know if he did this every year. I think he did. He would set aside a day where we would just get together and play excerpts, and he would listen, then he would rotate in and play. So you got a chance to play with him. And I remember doing Symphonie Fantastique and bum 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 beam bum 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 way bum 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 up to that E flat. And
Way articulation.
Yeah. Well, I remember playing it and thinking, okay, I'm just gonna, I'm playing an octave lower, so it's a lot easier to put a lot of spice and mustard on it, So I was like, I'm gonna paste this to the wall. And I played it as loud as I possibly could. And I don't even think Mark was even trying. And it was like, you couldn't even hear me. It was that, but it wasn't pushed. It was with a beautiful sound. Like that was one thing that was so remarkable about him out of many things. His high range is so effortless, or at least that, I'm sure he wouldn't say it feels effortless, but it's so with so much ease in the sound and so much like 100% efficiency in production. So it's just like when he got up there, it just like soared out above everyone. There's nothing you could do.
Yeah, from what I hear in his playing and from what I've heard from people that study with him, he seems to really focus on relaxation and tension. And you hear that in the way he plays, and that makes sense that his high range would ring like that. I remember you saying that reminded me of the Tilson Thomas San Francisco recording of Symphonie Fantastique. I got that in high school. I listened to that all the time.
Me
Such
too,
a good
actually.
recording.
Yeah. In fact, I did some sort of something like a book report, but for Symphonie Fantastique in a literature class. We were able to pick out like something non-book essentially to do a review over. So I chose them MTT Symphonie Fantastique with San Francisco. Yeah, and that was the first time I heard that music, and I brought it to my teacher, Kip Hickman, who and I was like, I want to learn this music. Because at the time I was still playing tenor trombone and trying to learn, alto clef, which was still pretty new to me when I was like a sophomore in college.
You're still learning it, right?
Yeah, of course. But yeah, and also playing Bruckner with him, that a totally different, in a lot of ways, skill set. You're living in not quite as high as an E flat, but you're living in this high tessitura where the first part's just got to ring out over the section. And so many players I find have to push to be there. And he could play with such a sense of ease. And with that sound, you knew exactly where you needed to put your voice. Because it was just like this leading quality that you almost can't teach. It's like something that you have inherently built into your sound. I mean, there's many players that come to mind, but someone like Pete Sullivan has that same sort of quality in his playing.
I think that's something in school you can be told it, but until you have consistent principal experience, you don't realize that you actually can do more by really finding that sweet spot of not trying too hard and like relaxation and letting the air do the work, and you project more, you can play more loudly.
Yeah, it's a totally different ball game than playing bass trombone. Bass trombone, to get the sound out requires just energy of like moving air, whereas really good high trombone playing is finding that like right in the middle of the sound and just letting it spin out the bell.
Spin.
Yeah, it was nice. It was really nice working with a person I looked up to my entire trombone life, and then to meet them, and not only do they live up to your expectations, but they're a great person, they're personable, and they're approachable. That's always like reassuring.
Yeah, it's really cool to talk to him, and he listens to the podcast. What?
I know.
Every time I hear stuff like that, I still don't believe it. Even if I meet anyone that listens, even if it's like, I don't know, a kid in high school, I'm like, really? That's awesome. Thanks. Because I'm just sitting at my desk talking into a microphone by myself right now.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you ever get people coming up to you that will bring up something, like not even referencing this specific episode, but bring up like a specific thing that we've talked about? And it's like for them, they just listen to it, but it's like, we've done how many of these? And it's like a specific nugget of a specific story from a specific episode. Without naming that episode, I have to go back in my filing cabinet and be like, what? In my head, and be like, wait, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I bet that's going to get harder and harder. For me, it helps a little bit that I have to listen to the episode like 5 times.
Right.
By editing and putting out clips and everything. That helps me remember. But yeah, I mean, that's cool. That's cool that people remember. And yeah, we are going to tell some stories over again, and we just have to accept that might happen. So
it's like
I give us forgiveness. Back to the birthday boy. Back to the birthday boy here. Okay, tell me what a perfect birthday would be for you.
Well, I wake up to a smooch on the forehead from Bassmaster. No.
You have a wife, Nick.
I wake up with the sassy Serb wife, and she brings
SSW.
me, and she brings me coffee in bed, and then we have breakfast, some sort of egg dish like eggs Benedict or an omelet or something like that.
Solid.
Then eventually go down to Chinatown. This is if I'm in New York. Eventually go to Chinatown, get a massage, get some soup dumplings.
Yeah.
Go walk around, maybe get a cocktail, go see a movie, something like that. Or it would be kind of the same thing, but involving a beach where you're laying on the beach and drinking cold beers in a beach chair. So
that sounds awesome. I thought you were going to be in. Aren't you going to? Is it New Mexico or Arizona soon?
Yeah. So I was supposed to be in Arizona on New Year's Day. I woke up with a fever.
Oh no!
That lasted like 48 hours, and so
was it a fever for the new year ahead?
Mm-hmm. It was a 2023 fever. 23ver.
Whoa!
And by the time I felt well enough, I could have gotten on a plane last night, but I would have only been able to spend about 48 hours in Phoenix, so it didn't really make sense.
That sounds like a novel. 48 hours in Phoenix. Are you feeling better?
Yeah, I feel fine now.
Well, I'm sorry you can't be down there for your birthday.
Yeah, we were going to do some fun stuff with the wife and the doggo.
Well, you have to go do something fun now. That is your prescription from Dr. Sebastian.
We'll see. This might just be a boring birthday.
You can hop on a plane with me in a few days, but we can talk about that later.
I'm coming to Pittsburgh, remember, when you're not going to be there?
Oh, that's right, because you only visit Pittsburgh when I'm not here. Okay. That's cool.
This is literally the only time I visited Pittsburgh when you're not there. Except for when I auditioned for my undergrad.
It's every time. Yeah. Where was I then? Huh?
You were at SMU, apparently.
Do you want to? You can have the key to my house and just walk around and do whatever. Well, no, I don't want you to do that. That's. What am I saying?
Yeah, I would leave you some Easter eggs somewhere. Hide something you won't find for a couple of years.
You know who left some Easter eggs was your puppy last time he stayed at my house.
Okay, let's go back.
Discovered a lot of those.
He was an actual puppy at the time.
Was he? He knew what he was doing. He's marking his territory. He knows you like
puppy.
me, and he's like Nick's mine.
Yeah,
it's my friend.
He doesn't do that anymore. Because he's fully housebroken. He was like 3/4 housebroken then. So especially going into a new environment, he would mark shit up. I remember the first thing he did is when he went into Steve Gellerson's apartment. That's our operations manager of the trombone retreat. He walked in and immediately just pissed on a sleeping bag. It wasn't even like a mark. It was a full bladder expulsion.
He's like, I'm going to sleep here.
Mm-hmm.
This is mine now. Give me one goal for the new year.
To walk more.
That's a good one. You're in a good city for that.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll tell people who don't live here that without even like intending to walk, like just commuting, I'll usually get my 10,000 steps in.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
And you're having to climb stairs all the time, way more than the average person. When I moved from New York City, I gained weight just because I was so used to having built-in cardio every day. I had to like add it in different ways.
Yeah, it's like even to go to the grocery store for me, it's probably like 1/10 of a mile, but it's 130 steps up to the grocery store. So it's not far, but it's like 6 flights of stairs right there.
Oh man. Yeah, well, keep that up. You have that death staircase right by your house. You can do that.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. The death staircase. Love it. What is your goal for the new year? One of your goals?
I don't know. I was thinking about it, and I think my goal is just continue to be awesome.
Mm.
You know, living the dream.
Once you get into a habit, it's easy to just stay on track with that habit. So keep it up.
Yeah, one habit, well, it's not a habit yet, but I tried it this morning because I've heard about the health benefits, is taking like a 1 to 3 minute cold shower.
Oh, yeah.
When you wake up. Oh, my God. I hated it so much. I hated it more than everything. I literally said, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I'm never doing this again. I'm like saying it out loud while doing it. And then afterwards, I feel freaking awesome.
It's like, have you ever been to you've been to the Russian Turkish baths with me here in New York.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You jump into the plunge pool, it's the same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, it's your body is definitely saying, run away.
But all the good, I feel like I had a cup of coffee, but it's lasting like all day and there's no crash kind of thing. All the good chemicals came down. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I have to do this now, but I think it'll get easier.
That's what I was just going to tell you. I have a friend who did it for 6 months and I was like, did it ever get easy? He goes, not even a little bit. He's
really?
Like, every single time it was the same, like, I hate this. But, really, it's like 2 minutes of your life. It's like, sucks,
for a trade-off. Yeah, a trade-off of feeling awesome all day. So, I don't know. I'll see. I'll try to find a way. Maybe you just got to go for it and immerse more quickly. I don't know. But anyways, we've gone pretty long already. Well, Nick, you're going to have an awesome rest of your birthday. When people hear this in a few days, make sure to go wish Nick a belated happy birthday and tell him you love him, because his love language is words of affirmation. So he really needs to hear that.
Words pretty of affirmation and Sebastian hugs.
That's not one of the categorized love languages. I guess physical touch.
But specifically physical touch from Sebastian.
If you find some random person's taking the test online and they just triggered that category, like, you need hugs from this specific person named Sebastian. It's like, who the fuck is that? Okay. I said the F word. My mom's not going to be happy. Okay. And if you enjoyed the podcast, tell a friend and subscribe everywhere you download your podcast. Also, please consider being a patron on patreon.com/tromboneretreat, and also leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it helps us out quite a bit. A special thank you to Houghton Horns at houghtonhorns.com for being a seasoned sponsor. Follow us at Trombone Retreat on the social medias and our website, tromboneretreat.com, where you can also join our mailing list. On Instagram, follow Nick at basstrombone444 and myself at js.vera.
And if you're feeling anxious,
slip on a nice pair of warm wool socks.
tie a cravat around your neck.
What is a cravat?
It's like a fancy tie.
Take a nice walk to your local haberdashery.
Pick out a dapper bowler.
Bowler. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's a bowler. I'm imagining this ensemble that we're wearing right now. I hope it includes pants, but so far it's very fashion forward. And go wish Nick Schwartz a happy birthday.
And retreat yourself.